It's the day after the biggest night in showbiz, the Oscars. I'm Anupama Chopra, and for the next hour, I'm taking you through the awards, who won, who lost, and why. Joining me is Oscar pundit Pete Hammond. He's going to give us the inside take on last night's glitzy ceremony. Pete?
Hi.
How is it going? Yeah, I know you're just recovering from a long night.
Yeah, it's a very long night. I mean, I just finished a few hours ago, and here I am, and the sun is shining here in Los Angeles, so everything's good. But yeah, it's not just a long night, it's a long season. This was the end of months and months and months leading up to this moment. So there's kind of an anticlimactic thing going on right now.
Are you feeling like postpartum?
Yes,
it's done?
Exactly. And I think a lot of the people involved and a lot of the nominees are feeling that strongly right now, you know, and you just have to like get down and start. We'll start over for next year, you know, but right now it's that feeling of the hangover.
Academy President Hawk Koch said that this is the best crop of movies in recent memory. Would you agree with that?
I would. It's the best crop I've seen, and I've covered the Oscars for years. And I think just collectively, this was an exciting time. I mean, when you have 6 of the 9 movies making over $100 million in the United States alone, and one other one, Zero Dark 30, almost there, that's an extraordinary showing. You know, that means the public's interested in these movies, but they're quality movies, and they're movies for adults and things like that. These are not the typical movies that make all the money. So Oscar had a lot to celebrate, not just for quality this year, but for successful box office films. So I know the Academy was thrilled. Absolutely thrilled to have this crop of movies available this year.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about the Best Picture race. Just a reminder, these are the Best Picture nominees: Lincoln, Argo, Life of Pi, Silver Linings Playbook, Zero Dark 30, Django Unchained, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Amour, and Les Miserables. Lincoln had 12 nominations, the highest domestic box office grosses from all the 9 films. You said in a blog that if an Oscar movie was designed from scratch, it would be Lincoln.
Yes.
What happened on the way to the Best Picture Oscar?
Well, it may be because it was designed from scratch as an Oscar movie, or that perception, you know, and Oscar often goes his own way. So when you say, here, this screams Oscar, the Academy members sometimes rebel. And in this case, I think they overdid it with Lincoln. I think the campaign was just too big. I'm a member of the Broadcast Film Critics, so we have an award show early on in the season. They were sending us coffee table books and, you know, Abraham Lincoln cookbooks for Thanksgiving. And I mean,
did you make anything out of it?
No, I haven't done my recipes yet on Abraham Lincoln, but I mean, oh, it was crazy. And I just think that it was a little bit of overkill. But then the real thing that I heard when Bill Clinton came and did the Golden Globes and introduced the film clip for Lincoln, that was perceived at the time to be a big coup. But when it came out that Spielberg actually called him personally to ask him to do it, they thought, why does he want this so much? Why does Steven Spielberg want this Oscar so much? He's already got 3, he's got all the money in the world and everything. So it seemed to a lot of voters I talked to, at least, like, he's got everything, we're not going to give him this. And also the other problem with the movie is they felt it was a little long and little dialogue heavy and that sort of thing, and just preferred some of the other films over it. It comes down to that. Sometimes it just comes down to a movie that you like. And that's what happened in this case, I think. Everyone thought it was going to win these awards that led up to the Oscars. And when it started losing weekend after weekend at award shows, the writing was clearly on the wall, and it lost that key thing called momentum that you need in an Oscar race.
We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So
the overdog became the underdog.
Yes, exactly. And I was talking to several people involved with the film, and they felt like right up to the end that it was going to change. The momentum was going to change, and the Academy was going to be completely different than everybody else. But you know, in these Oscar races, you can tell when you go to the Producers Guild or the Screen Actors Guild or the Directors Guild or any of these shows, what the industry sentiment's going to be, because they're all sort of members of the Academy as well. It's very much overlapping. Even though we're dealing with a movie, you know, that wins, that did not have a director nomination, and that's unprecedented. So I think they felt like because of that, and because Steven Spielberg obviously did have a directing nomination in addition to the most nominations and the most money, as you say, and the most everything, and the lofty subject matter, and the director who's, you know, worked 10 years, the most successful man in Hollywood, to bring his passion project to the screen, this was going to be it. And, you know, it just didn't connect for whatever reason. Daniel Day-Lewis did. You know, he never had a false note, and you know he was going to win.
Variety editor Peter Bart has this theory about if you win Best Picture, it has to be a film that has the Academy rooting. It has to conjure up a person that the Academy can root for.
Yes.
So what about Ben Affleck has the whole Academy rooting for him? You said in a blog that he's been very humble, and humble plays well in Oscar season. Is that the key?
Oh, totally. And he's played it brilliantly. You know, Ben is one of the best Oscar campaigners I've ever run across.
Really?
Why? In doing this for years. He just is so ingratiating, and he is humble. He has that, but he's also got that infectious enthusiasm for what he's doing. And I mean, just last night, I was literally with Ben at the governor's ball at midnight. I mean, he was there, one of the last ones before he went on to other parties. And he was higher than a kite. He just had the best time, you know, and so good. And he saw me and he came right up. This is after the Oscars, after winning and everything. He says, I promised you I was going to talk to you first, and I'm going to do it. You know, like that. He's that kind of guy. And so it was great. And, you know, and what I think also when he got snubbed by the director's branch, when he didn't get that nomination, you know, he told me, I was so depressed. He was so depressed. But he didn't show it publicly. He soldiered on.
He was very gracious about it.
Very gracious. And even though privately, you know, he was really hurting on that, because he would have won. He would have won director.
6 of the hostages went out a back exit.
Where are they? The Canadian ambassador's house.
We got Revolutionary Guards going door to door.
I got an idea.
I need you to help me make a fake movie.
So you want to come to Hollywood and act like a big shot without actually doing anything?
Yeah.
You'll fit right in.
And he said, after I didn't get the nomination, I thought it was all over. It was all over. And then all of a sudden, we started winning.
Yeah.
And he said, that's amazing. And so all of a sudden, he was worried that he was going to be perceived as too big of a favorite and that they were going to turn on him.
There'd be backlash.
There would be backlash. That's what he told me Saturday night when I saw him. And he was very nervous about the whole thing. But you saw his speech. You know,
very heartfelt. Very
funny. I mean, really just off the cuff. I mean, he didn't know what he was doing. He was throwing out stuff to his wife, going like, you know, marriage, you know, you got to work at it, but it's nice.
It's good work.
I mean, my gosh, you know, I thought it was one of the most fun kind of acceptance speeches.
But was Argo the consensus choice? Was it everybody's second favorite film? Is that what happened?
Well, I think it was a lot of people's first favorite film, too. But as you know how the Oscar voting works, it's on a preferential balloting system. And so you write down your number 1 choice, your number 2 choice, your number 3 choice. Basically, for most people, they never count beyond the number 2 choices. And then it gets it's a complicated system. But it's designed to create a consensus movie, a movie that everybody likes, so that if it's not all the number 1 choices that they can come up with a winner, they'll look to the number 2s.
It's at least the number 2 or the number 3.
It's at least a number 2. I definitely think Lincoln was not a consensus choice here, and Argo was. You know, Lincoln had its fans, and there it was. But it wasn't, you know, if not, it was probably down the ballot there. I don't think Argo was probably anywhere below a number 2 on most ballots. So, you know, everybody seemed to like the movie, even if they preferred Silver Linings, even if they preferred Zero Dark 30, even if they preferred something else. Argo was right up there all along. It's a movie that makes Hollywood look good.
It does.
You know?
It does.
This one, you know, makes Hollywood look like important and doing something in the world, and I think that was always going to play. And to have the former president sort of endorse the movie, Jimmy Carter, who was involved in it, at the end of the movie, you know, with an audio description of what really happened, I think really helps too. It gives it credibility. And also it's interesting to note that it's from Warner Brothers. It's a major studio movie.
Which hasn't happened since 2006,
yeah.
The Departed.
And so, you know, this is the majors getting involved again. They all had something this year, and so that's encouraging that they're going to make movies for adults. And that's what George Clooney, who's one of the producers of Argo, said backstage. He said, you know, this proves that if you make adult movies, it can make money and it can be something good. And we hope that it'll encourage the studios to keep doing this.
We're going to come right back and talk to you about Best Director.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. It's time for a break, but we're going on to Best Director. See you in a bit. The next category is Best Director. I'm in conversation with Oscar pundit Pete Hammond. And the nominees are Steven Spielberg for Lincoln, Ang Lee for Life of Pi, David O. Russell for Silver Linings Playbook, Michael Haneke for Amour, and Ben Zeitlin for Beasts of the Southern Wild. Best Director was the most curious category, to not have Ben Affleck there.
Oh my God, it was shocking. I remember the morning of the nominations, you know, and they were announcing them, and then they get to Ben Zeitlin. You know, oh my gosh, what a shocker, and no Ben Affleck. We went from A to Z, and it was crazy. And so, I mean, that really turned the race, didn't it? I mean, it was really this little director's branch of 371 people made such a difference. And I think in this case, it created a wave of sympathy.
It worked for him.
It worked for him. I think in the future, consultants and Oscar strategists may be trying to get their people snubbed.
To lose.
To lose. If you lose, we can win. You know, it's like that crazy Hollywood thing. But yeah, and so it turned the race very interesting. So we knew that Ben could not win Best Director, but he was nominated as a producer for Argo, so they knew they could give it
to him.
But I do think this directorial snub just helped the movie, and you could see it, and people were suddenly rooting for Affleck, and so I think that's what happened. But once you got down to the 5 directors that were nominated, it suddenly became a really interesting race between Ang Lee and Steven Spielberg and David O. Russell with Silver Linings, I think, a little bit. But I thought the minute Affleck got snubbed, this award, and I went in print and said it, and I never wavered, this award would go to Ang Lee, not Spielberg.
What made you so sure?
Because Life of Pi, his film, it was so clear and telling the story of the making of that movie and how difficult it was to make. It was an unfilmable book, basically. I think the industry looked at that and just like loved it. Most pundits that I knew, particularly early on, thought Spielberg would get it.
That's right.
This would be his consolation prize if Lincoln doesn't
So there was
win.
no consolation prize for Spielberg?
No, no. The only consolation prize for Spielberg is he's a multi-billionaire who has 3 Oscars and every award in town and can do whatever he wants. So that's a pretty good...
Let's not feel too bad.
No, he's in good shape, and he's always so gracious. And I thought Ben Affleck's, a shout out to him from the podium, was a really nice touch, you know. But... you know, I don't know. There was just a vibe that I was getting from talking to voters that they loved Ang Lee. They loved what he did with Life of Pi, that he pulled off this incredible technical feat. It screamed direction.
It did.
You know.
It didn't even have actors that, in that sense, you know, no known faces, you know, so yes, it did. That's
right.
director.
Although it did have Serge Sharma,
right.
who was wonderful, but he was
wonderful, but nobody here knew him.
Yeah, first time actor. I saw him last night at the Governor's Ball. I said, so nice first Oscars for you, right? And he goes, yeah. He was thrilled. But I think that was another aspect of why Ang Lee got it. He took this actor who's never acted and got this incredible performance as well, and everything about it was just blessed, I think, for Ang Lee. I talked to him afterwards, and he this is his 3rd Oscar also, you know, because he won foreign language film, and the director gets that for Crouching Tiger, and then he won for Brokeback Mountain. But I told him, you're setting a little bit of Oscar history here. He is the first director since George Stevens in the 50s. George Stevens directed A Place in the Sun and Giant, and both won Academy Awards for directing without winning Best Picture. That's the last time it's happened that a director has directed 2 films that didn't win Best Picture, but he won Best Director for it. It's a very unusual circumstance. Ang Lee pulled it off.
Tell me, is just a little bit embarrassing for the Academy to have a Best Picture that doesn't have even a Best Director nomination. Who directed it?
I know. You know, it directed itself, of course.
How does it happen?
And when they moved the nominations to 10 nominees, potentially 10 nominees for Best Picture, they kept still, there's only 5 nominees for Best Director, which means the Academy is saying up front, 5 of the films we will choose directed themselves. We know that. And that's why this system, they either have to match the directing category with picture or go back to 5 pictures, because it seems unfair. So I think they've got to sit in the Board of Governors meeting in the next few months and really figure this out, what they're going to do here. This year, in terms of the way the directing thing was handled, was a complete embarrassment for the Academy. In this case, everybody's going like, seriously, you got it wrong. And not just with Ben Affleck, but with Catherine Bigelow on Zero Dark 30 and Tom Hooper on Les Mis, and these others that, you know, were ignored by the director's branch for these movies that were key Best Picture contenders.
So you think things will change?
I think this time they're going to have a very healthy discussion about that. Let's put it that way. The Academy moves very, very slowly in changing things, but I would hope they would change it. The directors deserve better than what they're getting here. The Academy Award is the litmus test for everything here in terms of awards. You don't want to damage it by making it less credible, you know, and have a situation where a winning director may feel like he's second choice and he only won that way. I think they have to fix it.
In a few minutes, we're going to be talking about Best Actor and Best Actress, so don't go anywhere. It's time now for Best Actor and Actress. I'm in conversation with Pete Hammond, Oscar pundit. And the nominees were Daniel Day-Lewis for Lincoln, Bradley Cooper for Silver Linings Playbook, Hugh Jackman for Les Miserables, Joaquin Phoenix for The Master, Denzel Washington for Flight. Best Actress, Jennifer Lawrence, Silver Linings Playbook, Jessica Chastain, Zero Dark 30, Emmanuel Riva, Amour, Quvenzhané Wallis, Beasts of the Southern Wild, and Naomi Watts for The Impossible. Pete, was there ever even a moment of doubt that Daniel Day-Lewis would get the award?
No, this was one of those slam dunk things, you know, you could take it to the bank. Anybody that picked anybody else in that category certainly was going to lose their Oscar pool. Daniel Day-Lewis, I think, had this Oscar in his hands the minute he accepted the role. Now, it took him a long time to get to that point. He had turned down Steven Spielberg many times because he thought, if I screw this up, I'll never be able to show my face again in the U.S., you know. No one's ever won an Oscar before until last night for playing a United States president. No one. And he's the first one, and we had to go to England to find someone to pull it off. But he did a great job with it. You know, it was a subtle performance. He's now the only actor in Oscar history to have 3 statuettes for lead actor. It's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary story, but he was very humble about it. I talked to him early in the season about it, and he said, I just didn't think I could do it, and I didn't want to disappoint them. And Steven was beside himself that he kept turning him down. And so when he finally got that phone call and he said, okay, I'm going to do it, Steven said, I have to put the phone down and go, and I went and cried because he knew this would make the thing. And, you know, and it was a great performance. He really is just fantastic.
We are stepped out upon the world stage now, with the fate of human dignity in our hands. Blood's been spilled to afford us this moment now, now, now.
There's a big advantage these days to playing biographical figures, because you can go around and say, wow, he's just like Lincoln, or he's just like someone, I know that character. And so Academy voters like that. Last year it worked very, very well for Meryl Streep to win her 3rd Oscar as Margaret Thatcher. She'd been trying for years, since 1982, to get that 3rd Oscar. Well, she suddenly becomes Margaret Thatcher, the opposite, an American going and playing an English person, and that works too. So, and I love Daniel Day-Lewis's speech last night.
It was wonderful.
I mean, where he, you know, said he was actually the first choice for Margaret Thatcher. And
they were going to do a direct swap.
They were going to do a direct swap. was really charming. He was great. It was how to do an Oscar speech, I thought. He was terrific, and the role, I think it was preordained that he was going to win.
I thought Joaquin Phoenix was also incredible. Did he even have a shot, or because he dissed the award season so early on, he was just not even in the race?
Well, I don't think it's the fact that he dissed the award season. Look, George C. Scott won for Patton, by saying it's a meat parade and I'm never going to participate. I think the Academy, that brings more attention. I think in the case of Joaquin Phoenix, brilliant, brilliant performance, but they didn't love the movie.
We walk. She wrote me a letter. No one else wrote me a letter. She wrote me a letter. She just looks at me.
It's very, very polarizing, and the only nominations that it got were in the acting branches here, with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy Adams. And so Joaquin was brilliant, but the Academy at large, in the end, votes on acting too. It's not just the actors. And it was clear they didn't love the master. And so, no, I don't think Joaquin Phoenix ever had a realistic chance of winning this. Anyway, Daniel Day-Lewis had won at SAG and Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice and, every other choice, BAFTA. He'd done a clean sweep in the Precursor Awards, so it was very clear. Hugh Jackman, I thought, was brilliant in Les Mis.
He was brilliant.
Brilliant, and it's a shame that he had to come in a year where he had to go up against Daniel Day-Lewis's Abraham Lincoln. He even went on the David Letterman show with a big tall hat and a pipe to look like Lincoln, and he said, "I'm here trying to shill for votes for Oscars." I thought he was very funny. He's a terrific guy, Hugh. So I wish he had gotten some attention for that.
One day more.
Is that?
Another day, another destiny.
Hamza?
It's never-ending road to Calvary.
Pete, my favorite in the Best Actress race was actually Emmanuel Riva, and I thought, given that the median age of the Academy is 62, and that it was a birthday, I mean, what a great narrative. They might just go for it. What gave Jennifer Lawrence the edge?
She's 22, I mean...
how do you beat that?
How do you beat that? They have a history, they call it the babe factor in the Best Actress race. Not always, though, But when they have that opportunity, I also thought Emmanuel Riva would have a really good shot, and I actually predicted her. And I think that would have been amazing,
Mais c'est quoi mon image?
Tu es un monstre parfois. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
And it was her last chance to win, and Jennifer Lawrence is going to get all the great roles and be able to be there again, and it just wasn't to be. I think it was very close, though. I think it was very, very close. I talked to a lot of people that were rooting and voted for Emmanuel Riva, so I don't know, I mean, sometimes the Academy will surprise you. In this case, they didn't. They went with the favorite, and I was a little let down by that. I love Jennifer Lawrence. I thought she was amazing, but I wanted to see that moment with Emmanuel Riva on her birthday, and she had never been to Los Angeles.
This was her first trip?
First trip to LA, doesn't really speak English, has lived in the same apartment in Paris for 50 years, a wonderful woman, and just phenomenal in Amour.
That performance was outstanding.
Outstanding, but I think in the end it was a little too raw maybe for some people in the Academy, too close to home, and they'd rather go another way. And I mean, Jennifer Lawrence was remarkable. There was that moment when she's walking up on stage in that dress she was wearing.
And she stumbled.
She stumbled, and that was a little scary, but she was happy, and and she said happy birthday, Emmanuel, and things, and I thought it was a nice moment. It was the only award for Silver Linings Playbook, so they should have gotten something, and they did with her, and God, she was phenomenal. The role was written for a much older actress, and she Skyped in that audition and blew people away, and when I saw that picture in Toronto, I go, wow, this is a hell of a performance. So, it all came around, and the Academy obviously agreed.
What meds are you on?
I used to be on lithium and Seroquel.
I was on Xanax.
You ever take Klonopin?
Klonopin, yeah.
Like, is it what?
I'm tired, I want to go. Are you going to walk me home or what?
You have poor social skills. You have a problem.
I have a problem? Mm-hmm. You say more inappropriate things than appropriate things.
And there was that one scene with Robert De Niro when she just holds her own.
Oh, holds her own. I mean, amazing poise, amazing talent. particularly at her age, to be able to pull that off. I hadn't been impressed by a young actress that much since Shirley MacLaine in The Apartment in 1960 when I saw that. And she was up for the Oscar that year and she lost, and I thought that might happen to Jennifer Lawrence too with Emmanuel Riva. I didn't think Quvenzhané Wallis, as the youngest actress, had much of a shot there.
Jessica Chastain?
Yeah, she was in it in the beginning, but I think all the controversy over Zero Dark 30 might have hurt her too. And I don't think Jessica expected it at all. I had been talking to her, and she said, it's not my year. It's not my year. But, I mean, she's also great in that.
She's going to have many years.
And Naomi Watts, I thought, was phenomenal in The Impossible. Absolutely brilliant.
But there was no buzz on that at all.
None. And it was the only movie that was, its single nomination was in Best Actress. So it didn't have much of a chance because the others were all from Best Picture nominees. So it was Jennifer Lawrence's to lose, and she didn't. Yeah.
In a few minutes, we're talking about Best Supporting Actor and Actress. Don't go anywhere. I'm in conversation with Pete Hammond, Oscar pundit, and we're talking Best Supporting Actor and Best Supporting Actress. The nominees were, for actor in a supporting role, Alan Arkin for Argo, Robert De Niro for Silver Linings Playbook, Philip Seymour Hoffman for The Master, Tommy Lee Jones for Lincoln, Christoph Waltz for Django Unchained. Actress in supporting role, Sally Field for Lincoln, Anne Hathaway in Les Miserables, Jackie Weaver for Silver Linings Playbook, Amy Adams for The Master, and Helen Hunt for The Sessions. What an exciting Best Actor or Supporting Actor race this was.
Oh, Supporting Actor and Actress. I think 7 of them were past winners.
They're all winners, yeah.
Yeah, collectively. The Supporting Actor race, just like a toss-up for me. They're all great. I have to say the winner, Christoph Waltz, I guess he won the Golden Globe and he won the British Academy Award, so it's not a shock. But it's really a leading role. It was
a parallel role.
Yeah, it's a parallel role, and so I think that's what pushed him over the top, in that it's such a big role and it's vivid, and they loved him 3 years ago in Inglourious Bastards, and he came back kind of with the similar kind of thing a little bit, and it plays well with the Academy.
Do you know what a bounty hunter is? You kill people, and they give you a reward. You help me do that, I'll take you to rescue your wife. Bullseye.
I thought, in fact, Robert De Niro might be the one, because there's such a history there, such an iconic actor. He hasn't been nominated in 21 years. Why didn't it happen? Yeah,
Robert De Niro, I mean, with all the love for him, and this was a big comeback in terms of a really quality role, and his first time at the Oscars in 21 years as a nominee, and hasn't even won in 32. I mean, those are amazing statistics, and it worked for Meryl Streep. The Weinsteins did a whole campaign here reminding people of these stats, of these numbers, that Robert De Niro hasn't been around, and he was so good in Silver Linings Playbook.
What?
Hey.
What's this?
Didn't tell me you took him out?
The court said yes.
Yeah, but what did the doctor say?
Can I do an interview for a school project on mental illness?
No.
I just thought, their campaign was coming together. He got his footprints at the Chinese theater right as voting was going on.
He was crying on Katie's show.
He was crying on Katie Couric's show. He was, doing Q&As. I did a American Cinematheque Q&A with him. He was phenomenal in that. But, I think this was really a tight thing, because you have these 5 actors, all who've won before, all who are just amazing in these movies. I loved Alan Arkin in Argo. I thought he was great. Philip Seymour Hoffman, he was almost like the lead in The Master. He was certainly the title character. And Tommy Lee Jones, a lot of people thought he would win. And I actually had heard a lot of buzz the night before the Oscars, and I was thinking, oh God, I probably shouldn't have gone with De Niro, because it's going to be Tommy Lee Jones. Instead, it's Christoph Waltz. And, Django had more appeal than I thought it would with the Academy overall. They really seemed to like that movie. despite all the controversy about its treatment of slaves and what it was doing, they loved that movie. And I think Christoph Waltz just benefited from it. And he's a wonderful actor, too. So it's very unusual to get these 2 Oscars within such a short period of time.
And with the same director.
And with the same director.
He's the only actor to win for Tarantino movies.
Yes, exactly, which is interesting right there. I remember this happened several years ago with Diane Wiest. She won a couple of Oscars in close proximity for the same director, Woody Allen. So sometimes there can be that actor-director connection that really pays off with the Academy, and I think that's what happened in this case too.
And what gave Anne Hathaway the edge over Sally Field?
Well, Anne Hathaway got to play a prostitute who gets her hair cut, who dies, who sings, who has this incredible scene, and it's that scene. It's that one scene of singing that song that people remember, you know, and that's what it takes. It's a relatively small role.
Right, my girl, on your way.
And a dream my life would be. Help me, please, I have a child. So different from this, how I'm living. So different, no, from what it seems.
Sally Field was phenomenal, and
she was so good.
So good, and it would have been hers. It would have been her 3rd Oscar, if not for Anne Hathaway coming in with that one moment. And you know, Anne Hathaway, she hosted the Oscars a couple of years ago. It didn't go that well. People thought maybe not, you know. But look, she comes back in this. Where did she get this from? How did she play that scene? I heard so many people say that, and I think she was unbeatable in that regard. Also, she'd also won everything, so Sally Field knew it, and you know, and Anne Hathaway, you know, she deserved it. She's really a terrific actress, really a terrific actress. You just hope with the Oscars there's going to be a surprise somewhere, or there's going to be something that goes unexpected. And the thing with this show is, nothing was really unexpected. The people that
there
won,
wasn't a moment that you didn't know was coming.
I know. There wasn't anything, you know, unless you get into some of the little technical categories where you go, wow, I didn't know that was going to win there. But there was really no big surprises in that regard. And you hope in an Oscar show that you're going to get that, something out of left field, or something that hasn't happened in 5 other award shows that have preceded it. And that's not what we got last night. We got another Anne Hathaway speech, and she's lovely, but there you have it.
You could have done with something else.
Yeah. I would have loved to see Sally Field. I would have. You know, I loved Helen Hunt, too, in the Sessions, but she didn't have a chance. And
neither did Amy Adams.
No, and Amy Adams has been nominated every other year. You know, 4 times. She's just terrific. She's going to get this Oscar one of these days. She's absolutely going to get it.
It'll build up.
Yes, yes, exactly. Or she'll be like, you know, like Glenn Close, you know, several nominations and never got it. That happens, too, but she'll click with the role. It's often the role. And it comes along. And in Anne Hathaway's case, she got the role.
In a few minutes, we're talking about the writing categories. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk now about the writing categories, and the nominees were Amour, written by Michael Haneke; Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino; Flight, John Gatennis; Moonrise Kingdom, Wes Anderson and Roman Coppola; Zero Dark 30, Mark Boal. And the nominees for adapted screenplay were Argo, Chris Terrio; Beasts of the Southern Wild, Lucy Alibar and Ben Zeitlin; Life of Pi, David McGee; Lincoln, Tony Kushner; Silver Linings Playbook, David O. Russell. Pete, what gave Chris the edge over Tony Kushner?
You know, that was a tough category.
It is a tough category.
Yeah, Tony Kushner.
I thought he was going to win.
Yeah, you know, I did originally, but
you changed your mind?
Last few weeks I've been with Chris Terrio for a number of reasons, but Tony Kushner is a playwright, Pulitzer Prize winner, Angels in America, Tony winner. I mean, you know, but he's, a lot of people don't consider him a screenwriter. When he turned in the first draft of Lincoln.
It was 500 pages.
It was 500 pages. I mean, I know Kathy Kennedy, the producer, she said they were in Telluride at their house, and she told her husband, Frank Marshall, go upstairs, they're faxing the script in. And he kept yelling down, how long is this friggin' script? We're running out of fax paper. It's crazy, but it's a great script. It's a great script. It's beautifully written. He put so much into it. You thought he was going to win. So did I. Sorry, but I think sometimes momentum shifts, and when the Lincoln thing started falling apart, that wasn't good. But right as the voting began, this Connecticut congressman came out and questioned the credibility of Lincoln by saying that two of the representatives from Connecticut did not vote against the 13th Amendment as the movie says they did. Tony Kushner and Steven Spielberg were then forced to defend their movie and the dramatic reason they did this. And I think that hurt it. I really did, because it was riding along as the true story of Lincoln and how this amendment got passed. And all of a sudden, you know, they had to say, well, we did that to create dramatic tension, so we moved some of the facts around. It's called playing loose with the facts, and that never works, you know, when push comes to shove and you're voting for the Oscars. It just was bad timing. It got a little bit of the 0 Dark 30 thing, you know, which happened to that script as well. So I think that hurt Tony Kushner, and I think Chris Terrio came up at the right time. I think, you know, Argo was going to win Best Picture. It can't just win Best Picture. Usually, since they can't win Director, the screenplay will go along with that. You know, if you like the movie, you're going to give the screenwriter some credit. And in this case, they did. And it also was a very tricky screenplay to write, too, because it had to play with all those elements of tone, of comedy, drama, and everything else that made Argo so great. And he also won the Writers Guild Award. But those votes were in 3 weeks before the momentum started building for Argo. So that was a genuine vote for the screenplay as well for Chris Terrio. I saw him last night at the Governor's Awards, and you know, he said, I didn't know if I was going to win, so I didn't even think about it all day. I just worked on my new script, which is about the Greengrass story. And he says, I'm going back to New York tomorrow morning, this morning, and I'm working on my script, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep going ahead. And I said, well, you've got this little Oscar, and he gave me his Oscar to hold. Yeah, yeah. That thing's heavy. It's heavy. It's quite impressive. And he was so happy, you know, and he was a guy that was writing TV scripts and things. I mean, this was just like a dream, you know, for Chris Terrio. So it was terrific.
But through this season, there's been a lot of debate about reality and how much liberty you can take with it. Because even with Argo, they did dramatize, which Ben Affleck said up front that I did dramatize. So do you think there's going to be some debate in this town about, you know, how much liberty can you take? Because if everyone's going to be held up to, you messed with the truth, you did this, how does that work? How do you create art?
I know. Well, I think it helped Argo that they were so upfront about it in the beginning, you know, and I think that they have to explain to people that they're not making documentaries. You know, this is not a documentary, and you have to take some dramatic license. The whole thing that happened at the airport at the end there, yeah, that was a lot of dramatic license was taken there. But you know what pays off for movies like this when they do that is if you have the real people going around saying they got it right. And in this case, all those hostages are alive, and they're around, and they were at the premiere, and they're talking to journalists, and they're telling people.
So nobody minds.
Nobody minds. You know, it's close enough. That's really key, you know, to have the real people there saying this works. If the people walked around town saying they got it so wrong and this wasn't it, that would kill their chances. That would absolutely kill their chances.
I thought the evening really pepped up with Quentin Tarantino's speech.
Yes, yes. In the original screenplay, it's so great. You know, Quentin had won in the 90s for Pulp Fiction. It was great to see him again. He's such a lively guy, you know, and he really wanted this. He really wanted this one, I was told, and he got it, you know. And
but all the controversy, Pete, about especially the use of the N-word, you know, all of the sort of racial politics of this film. Spike Lee said he wouldn't see it just out of respect for his ancestors.
Yeah.
None of that damaged this?
None of it damaged it. I think people just liked the movie for whatever reason. And they like Tarantino. You know, he does very vivid stuff. His stuff is not subtle. It's out there, but it's entertaining, and he's got a way with dialogue that's just amazing. And in that category for original screenplay, I thought the other screenplay that was just brilliant was Moonrise Kingdom. But its single nomination was for screenplay, so that doesn't, you know, bode well.
No momentum.
Yeah, 0 Dark 30, which had won at the Writers Guild, only won, I think, at the Writers Guild because Django Unchained was ineligible. And it was plagued with, you know, controversy itself, so I didn't think Zero Dark 30 had much of a chance there. I thought they'd give it to Michael Haneke for Amour, you know, that rare kind of thing, but that's very rare for a foreign language film to win in that category. So it was really Tarantino's to lose. He had won it at the British Academy Awards too, and at the Golden Globes, so he followed the same trajectory that Christoph Waltz did. These groups love Django Unchained, and so that was great. But he's so much fun when he gets up there. He's just so, you know, he says, I know you're going to play me off, but don't do it yet. You know, he actually...
Peace out.
He challenged him. Yeah, he challenged him. So that was great. And, you know, so we had, you know, a couple of really good speeches from the writers, thank God, because the writers know how to give speeches.
I mean, I thought Daniel Day-Lewis's speech was nice as well.
He was great.
He was great. He's always so eloquent and just so graceful.
But why do they have to just take out a list and read off names? And one winner said Josh Lieberman. I remember the name twice, just in case we didn't hear it the first time. You know, we don't care. You know, call them up later and thank them. Say something meaningful. You know, you want those moments in an Oscar show where you get those speeches, and we didn't get them last night overall. We only got them in bits and pieces here.
Tell me, finally, Pete, what difference did the online voting make?
Well, you know, that will be a source of debate for a long time. I think from what I heard, about 50% wound up voting in the final votes with online voting. The other 50% went back to paper ballots. A lot of people that voted online during the nominations switched to paper ballots during the final because it's so complicated. It's like voting at the CIA. It's so much security and stuff.
Do you think the online voting skewed it younger, maybe?
I think it might have skewed it a little younger. I actually think a lot of the older people, I think they're getting a bum rap on this because I think they have a lot of time in the world to figure it out, and they kept calling the helplines, the support lines. I know they did that. So I know a lot of the older people used electronic voting. I think where the electronic voting really made a difference this year was in being able to vote right until the last minute. You know, and I think a lot of the voting this year, particularly in the finals, were going on in the last weekend. And I talked to numerous people. Mark Bowl, who was nominated for Zero Dark, had not voted when I saw him at the Writers Guild, and that was on Sunday. The ballots were due 2 days later. And he said, I'll get around to it tomorrow or whatever. You know, it's online. We can just like go in at any moment and do it. And I think that's going to be the wave of the future in the voting for the Academy. They've got to iron out how you do this, though, to get everybody to do it. And it's also a little weird to have this option where you can do paper ballot or this. It's got to be one or the other eventually. You know, they can't just say, you know, we're going to do both, because that's not the point of it. They've got to either switch to online or just say we're going to go back to paper completely.
Pete, what's your one abiding memory from the award season?
Oh, my one abiding memory, you know, I have so many memories with every award season. What I love about award seasons is I get to meet some of the greatest people in the world and get to talk to them, and you know, I do so many Q&As around town with them, and you know, they become sort of like friends, you know, and you know, after it's over, you miss them, you know, and so I saw at this award season people from last, like this weekend I kept running into Viola Davis, you know, from The Help, and I go like, oh my God, remember that, you know, what we went through last year in talking about it, because it goes on so long. Ben Affleck, I was in Telluride with him in September, and it was so much fun to be there at the beginning of the Argo journey.
And you've seen the whole thing.
I've seen the whole thing, and that to me is the most fun about award season, is to watch it go through and see how much it means to these people. The Oscar means a hell of a lot. It's wild. It's bigger than a political race, than a presidential race in a lot of ways. But it's fun to meet the people and go through the season with them, and that's what I remember the most.
Pete, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful talking to you. Get some rest. That wraps up the evening after. Keep watching Star Movies.